Have you been struggling with your throttle control when you're flying? You're getting that little bounce in your step, or it's just kind of tough for you to fly indoors? Well, today I'm going to give you my 3 biggest tips on how I fly indoors, how I keep that throttle control nice and level, and make those smooth flights to keep all your clients happy. So let's get into it and let's talk about those 3 steps for you. One of the most frequent questions I get asked all the time is like, how do you keep that throttle control? How do you keep it so smooth? What are your rates? All that kind of good jazz, all in the same field of how do I keep my flight so smooth to keep those clients happy? Well, today I'm going to show you probably the 3 most important things that I found for me that's going to make it not only easy for me to fly indoors, but to keep my throttle control and to keep that drone nice and level as if it was a DJI Mavic Mini or whatever other, DJI drone it is out there, and it doesn't look like an FPV drone. So let's get into those 3 steps and let's talk about them, of how it has been super helpful and super beneficial for me in order to get better at flying FPV drones. The first step, and probably is going to be the least fun of all of them, probably something you already know and something you don't want to hear, you got to get in the simulators. In order to practice, in order to do anything, simulators, every single pro pilot will tell you at some point, one point or another, they have tried and done everything in the simulator, whether that be mountain dives, chasing skydivers, chasing bikers, flying through buildings, going slow, going fast, flips, whatever it is. Everyone has done it in a simulator first before they brought it to real life. It makes your life 10 times easier because when you crash in there, you can restart and do it again, versus when you crash in real life, you're probably going to have a broken drone. My biggest tip for flying indoors and practicing that throttle control so you can keep your drone nice and level is find a small arena, indoor area, something of that nature. Don't do one of the outside places. Go find a small space indoors in one of the levels, whatever simulator you use. It doesn't matter what simulator. Get your drone, get it to your rates, whatever rates you need, and find an area where you can just practice flying nice and slow, keeping it nice and slow, going nice and slow, just kind of hovering around, right? So practice as if it was a real estate shoot, right? So find an arena, find some sort of indoor area, and you're just going to go nice and slow. You're going to be hovering around, and you're going to keep that thing nice and level and keep it nice and slow as easy as possible. So that's something that's helped me a ton because that allowed me to practice indoors, and then I could bring it to real life, and it made my real life flights so much easier. Now, a little piggyback off of those simulator flights, and something else that you can do is once you start practicing that, something else that you're going to practice inside is you're going to practice hovering inside. So you're going to practice your hovering in the simulator. I also want you to practice hovering inside. And what do I mean by that? The best pilots are those that not only can go fast, but they can also just hold their drone in a stable, level position. So something that I've done in the past and something I do all the time is me living in a tiny apartment. I will practice my flights inside. I just have literally 2 rooms and a little living room. I will literally just practice flying in here, going nice and slow, setting up a little obstacle course, which is always super fun. But something I also do a lot is I'll take the drone and we're just going to launch it, and we're just going to maybe hover right above the bed, hover right in the room, and see how long we can hold that position. See how long you can hold it. Maybe hold it in the same spot. Try and keep it the same height. Find something like if I was to fly with those shelves right there, maybe I want to fly at the create sign right there. We're going to do a little flight with you guys. Having that camera angle up super high is going to make it harder to hover because when you're level and parallel with the ground, you're going to be looking up. So if you can, try and bring that camera angle down a little bit, and that's going to help a ton. So one kind of place that you can do some practice flying. So if I was to sit here and hover right in front of this create sign, should be able to just sit right here. And now if you really want to get technical, you start getting some flights in the house. Right? Start practicing some of this jazz. Or maybe it's the TGN sign. So you're just going to fly at the same level position, face it, and you're just going to hold it. Hold it and try and keep it as level as possible, as long as possible. That is going to help so much with your throttle control and learning how to hover, to fly inside, and to find that point of your drone where you can fly level, and when you speed up that footage, it's going to still look crispy smooth. So that was tip 1. It's kind of a 2-part series. You're going to fly in the simulator, and then you're going to learn to fly and hover indoors, and you're going to make it nice and easy, nice and smooth. Now, before you fly indoors, there's a couple other 2 tips that I would like to share. And maybe some people know this, maybe some people don't. Something that helps with smoother, easier calmer flights is your camera angle. And what do I mean by that? Let me grab a drone and let me show you real quick. Here's my Cinelog 25. Now, a lot of times when pilots are flying, they're just going to have that camera angle nice and high, right? So the higher your camera angle, so the greater the degree, which means in order to keep that thing level with the ground, you're going to need more pitch in order to go faster, right? So one thing that I do a lot of my flights is I'm like 5 degrees, maybe. And this GoPro's about the same, right around there, right? So if you can, I don't know if you can see that right now. We're going to put it up right there. But basically, I'm going to keep that thing at like 5-10 degrees max for those indoor flights. And we're going to be able to keep it nice and slow, nice and smooth. Now, if I was to raise that thing up here, obviously when you're flying level, you can't see the ground, right? So you need to have more pitch going forward in order to see the ground, which then in turn, you're going to go faster, 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 faster. If that thing's darn near level, like it is right there, you're just going to be cruising darn near flat, and you're just going to kind of be slightly going forward, just a little bit of pitch going forward. So that's my second tip. So once you get in the simulator, and same thing in the simulator, you're going to practice with your thing, with your camera angle around 5 to 10 degrees. And you're going to pitch that forward. Same with your GoPro. Sometimes my GoPro I do a little bit lower than my actual camera angle, which helps capture all those spots. I apologize for any noise out there. My neighbor's doing some sort of yard work or something. But once you get in the simulator, practice at about 5 to 10 degrees. And you're going to be going nice and slow, practicing your hovering, practicing flying indoors, and just keeping things nice and steady, nice and smooth. And see if you can find an area without going forward, backwards, sideways, left, right, up, and down. See if you can just hover the drone. Now, my last tip, and this kind of goes hand in hand with everything else, everything we talked about. You're going to want to do this probably before you get in the simulator, or once you're in the simulator and going forward. You're going to want to get a nice throttle curve on your controller. And what do I mean by a throttle curve? Now, I'm going to link below a video where I talk about my rates and the throttle curve for you guys, so you guys can check that out as I go a little bit more in detail and depth into it. But basically, you're going to have a curve, right? So you're going to find that hovering point. Now, when you go practice flying and hovering indoors, what I want you to do is set up a camera and film your controller, film your stick, so you can see at what point in your stick where your throttle is, so, and where your hovering point is. So let me show you. You got your controller right here, right? Oops.
Welcome to Tango 2.
We don't need to turn that on. So basically, when you turn it on and you're throttling and you're hovering, say if your hovering point is right here in the middle, or it could be a little bit like 30%, 40%, 50%, whatever it is. Say it's in the middle. Basically what you're going to do on a normal throttle curve, that line is just a straight diagonal across from 0 to 100 and then 50 right in the middle. So basically any small little throttle adjustments and that thing's going to jump. It's going to bounce. It's going to bounce. It's going to bounce. So what you want to do is you want to find your hovering point, and this is why you're going to film your controller when you're practicing your hovering. So when you film it, you're going to notice like, oh, hey, my hovering point's at about just below. So that's the middle point, right? You got your middle point right there. If it's just below, it's at like 45, you're going to adjust your throttle curve. And I can show you my throttle curve. Mine's, I think, at 40. So you're going to adjust it right there, and you're going to have that kind of be the middle point. And then basically you're going to create this little S curve that's going to like kind of, rather than being a straight diagonal, it's going to kind of round off, right? So it creates an S. So when you push up, it's still at the hovering point. It's still at the same power. And then if you go down, it's still a little bit of the same power, so it's less up and down. But then you're still going to get the full power when you go full up and full down. It's just going to take a little bit more to get there. So when you're kind of jumping around like this, it's not going to bounce as high up and down. It's going to be a smoother transition. So you come into your PID tuning, rate profile settings, and you have these two S curves right here, right? So this is going to be your throttle curve, and this is going to be your pitch roll and all that good jazz. So right here, you can see about 40, 44, 45%, so 43, somewhere in there. That's where my midpoint is, right? So I'm at my throttle mid around that same point. I limited my throttle limit percentage down to 80. And that's going to create that S curve. So when you push up and down and you throttle, you're going to have less of a jump, rather than if you were to have a completely straight line, which is when you're going to turn this bad boy down. So if you had a straight line, this thing's going to jump up and down like crazy as you throttle, and you're going to get more of a bounce. So you want to have that throttle expo going. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. You can copy mine if you want. This is everything that I have for the Cinelog 25, which is what I use everything for. So that's the throttle curve. So it's just basically a little S curve. It's a little S like you are in your color grading, and you create those nice little contrasty colors. It's the same concept. And it's basically just going to be a nice little S so that thing doesn't jump up and down rather than being on a straight line. Cool? Those are my 3. you could call it 4 biggest tips. There's 3, basically 4 tips. I kind of lied a little bit. You're going to set up your drone and your camera angle to about 5-10 degrees max. That's going to allow you to barely pitch forward, and you can kind of practice that hovering, and that way you can still see forward, still see level without actually going super far, if that makes sense. Next, you're going to get in the simulator and you're going to start practicing, right? And you're going to film yourself. You're going to film yourself and your throttle and see where your hovering point is. Once you found your hovering point, then you're going to go into beta flight, plug your drone in, match my rates if you want to. It's the rates that I use for this drone, which I use about 90% of my shoots. And you're also going to do that throttle curve. If you need to, you can even do the throttle limit, but make sure you get that S curve, and that middle point is going to be right there, right where your throttle and hovering point is. That's your hovering point, and then that way you're going to have less of a jump when you use your throttle going up and down. Once you do that, then you're going to take your drone, go practice a little bit more in the simulator, and then take it in real life. Start practicing in the house, doing some hovering. You're going to hover in your living room, hover in your bedroom, whatever it is. If you want to just go sit in your bed, lay in your bed, and just lay there and practice. Then you're going to take your drone outside, maybe go to your local park, something where you kind of need to not, you don't have a ton of room. It doesn't need to be a 2-foot gap, but maybe let's go practice flying underneath the monkey bars, right? So you can go back and forth, or practice hovering under the monkey bars. That way you can't go down into the bark, and you can't go up into the actual monkey bars themselves. So those are my 4 biggest tips. Camera angle, throttle curve, practicing in the simulator, practice hovering, not practice flying, practice hovering. We want to practice hovering in our bedrooms, basements, house, garage, wherever you want to do it, and then go outside and practice some hovering underneath some structures of sorts. If you find like a gazebo or a garage, practice, and then just practice smooth flying throughout. Maybe set up an obstacle course, and you're good to go. Again, if you guys have any questions, you have anything you want me to talk about, you have any topics you want me to talk about further, would be happy to. Let me know if you guys have any questions or concerns or want anything for me to talk about. I'm happy to discuss anything I need to. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.